Hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Iro Alampe. I work in the Mediterranean Information Office in the education sector, particularly in a network called MEDIS, a network of educators around the Mediterranean. And I would like to welcome you all in this meeting. Together with my colleague Vicky, we will be hosting this meeting. Vicky, if you want to say a few words.
Good morning from me. Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's nice to see you all in our webinar. Before further ado, I would like to share with you a few housekeeping notes for our sessions. Let me share my screen. Okay. I hope that you can see my screen now. So our session is being translated from English to French, and you can choose the channel that you prefer, the language channel from the bottom bar, interpretation. Click on interpretation and choose the channel you wish. Please stay as focused as you can. Get comfortable, grab a cup of tea or your coffee, and you may keep your notes and your questions, of course, for the end, but kindly keep in mind that our PowerPoint and the video recording of the session will be shared to all of you. Last but not least, have a plastic packaging with you or a plastic object because we will use it. And one more thing to go is to keep your camera on, your microphone off, and have your chat box open, because the chat box will be our main interaction tool. We will interact and share through the chat box today. That's all from my part, Iro. I will stop share now. And I'm wondering if Professor Skoulos may join us. Professor Skoulos, the MIO chairman and the MEDIS coordinator, is going to address our webinar today. However, because of another meeting that is still going on, and I'm sure that he's engaged in it, he's not available right now. What we could do, Iro, is to start with a presentation.
Okay.
And he will come in, he will join us when he can.
Olga, can you please allow me to share screen? I think I cannot. Something. Is Olga there?
Yes, she is, but she's on the phone. Let me check with her.
1 minute, please, because I'm happy to see some familiar faces from around the Mediterranean. Greece, Jordan, so this webinar is based on this material. Maybe some of you have seen it on our website. This is the hard copy. It is a student's material. And what we're going to do today in the next 1.5 hours is share with you some teaching tips in order for you to use it with your own learners. Now I can share my screen. Thank you. Let's see. Okay, you can see it now.
Yes, good morning, everybody.
Okay, so maybe you have browsed in this material. It has 18 plus 1 activities or ideas for activities that you can use. So in this webinar, after housekeeping notes and our welcome, we'll start with a nice break. And our goal is to go activity by activity to get a glimpse on each of them and share with you tips for each. We will end the seminar with an evaluation. We are done with these slides. Professor Skoulos probably is not here, but he will intervene at some point in our webinar to give his welcome message. So we will start immediately with our ice break. So as Vicky said, we will use a lot the chat tool. So bear in mind, we will pose several questions for you. So you have 1 minute to think, what is the most disturbing marine litter item for you personally? And write it in the chat.
Plastic bags so far, plastic bottles, cigarette butts, and of course the disposable masks. Cigarette butts again, ghost nets, single-use plastics. Fishing gear, again fishing gear, a lot of ghost nets, I would say, plastic bottles again.
Okay, so I guess our participants today are well accustomed with the ghost nets. They're experienced in this. My most disturbing item, I don't know if it's visible to you, it's this. It is actually the material that we cover the straws. Not only do we use straws, it's a kind of a symbolic material in the single-use plastic mindset, the straw itself, and that's why in Europe and in many other regions of the world, we're trying to limit them. But we have to use also this to envelope the straw, and this, of course, is not recycled, just like the straw is not recycled. And if you visit a destination that has a touristic beach, it's probably full of these, at least in my region. So to begin with the first activity, let's assume that we want to sensitize someone, a learner or an adult, a young person, about marine litter. Where would you start from? What would be your initiating comment about this problem? How would you try to provoke him or her?
Your entry point, let's say, eh?
We have 1 minute for you to consider some ideas or comments or questions in order to get someone's attention around the subject.
I see a lot of thinking in this question. Only one answer so far.
Oh, you have 1 minute. Would you say something? Would you show something? Would you do something at home?
Okay, I see a lot of feedback now. I can tell that wildlife is an entry point for some of our participants. Talking to visitors also. Another entry point is start from what you eat, what do we eat, and what do we throw? We throw out. Another idea is to provide accurate scientific knowledge and data. use of visual materials that are depicting the problem. What else? Again, what can be found on our plates? That's an interesting idea.
Great.
And
Okay,
ideas keep coming.
Okay, as you keep on reflecting on these questions, obviously there are a lot of entry points depending on where you live and depending on the person you have in front of you. In our activity, let's see. For some reason, I cannot go. Okay, here it is. In our book, the first activity calls learners to keep record of the waste generated at home over a period of 1 week. So we ask them to sort their waste in categories and to use a scale to record the weight. And of course, each category should correspond to the different type of bin that is available in the area. So why did we do that? Because we thought that, as many of you already said, it's good to start from what already learners know, or start from their everyday life, for example, their plate, what they're eating. Another reason to do that is to create an unexpected or shocking experience to attract their interest. And we believe that the amount of waste that will be collected in only 1 week, it will be a shocking experience for them and will generate reflections and discussions about how they could manage their waste better or how they could avoid some of it. Tips if you want to run this activity. You should categorize the items according to the recycle system of your region. Here in this book, we present these 5 categories that you see in the slide. So in Greece, we have the blue bin for recycling, glass. In some regions, we have a bin for organic material, the general waste bin, and some specialized bins, for example, for batteries, clothes, and so on. Before starting the activity, the recording week, discuss how you will do the sorting. For example, if you record a bottle, should you record it as one object or as 2? Record the bottle and the lid separately, so that you all measure items in the same way. Since a lot of the activities are going to take place at home, it is advised also that you inform the parents and ask for their cooperation in order to keep the recording at a family level. There's another activity that we propose as a starting, as an entry point. And in this book, it's called the Top 10. So we ask participants, learners, to organize a litter survey or a cleanup activity at a nearby beach, or it can be a wetland, a park, a river, some area that you have close to you. Again, the reasons we do that is because we start from something that is familiar to the learners, their immediate environment, and we want to create an unexpected shocking experience. Do we create an unexpected shocking experience when visiting a beach, even if this beach is regularly cleaned? According to our experience, yes, because even seemingly clean beaches are in many cases full of waste, especially at the backside. So to realize the extent of the problem of marine litter, nothing is more enlightening than a walk on the beach. You can choose how scientific this survey will be, depending on your learners and your available time. For example, you can do just a game of top 3. So you ask learners to walk on the beach and to observe the 3 most common objects that they notice. You can use at a higher level of participatory science approach, you can use a 1-page form. So people will be asked to fill in a single page to collect the observations, just like the page used in the international cleanup campaign that is a very popular report. Even high level, for example, if you work with university students and you wanted to engage in a severe monitoring activity, you can use applications such as the Marine Litter Watch application that is very popular in Europe, or the application that is popular in your country. The Marine Litter Watch has more than 190 categories of items that you can select and monitor from. Obviously, this type of survey needs a lot of preparation on your behalf and on behalf of the learners. But even a simple visit to the activity will be more effective if you prepare it. So you can prepare some before, during, and after tips for your learners. Why we propose that? We propose that in order to connect the observations of your survey to something bigger, learners usually like to participate in big projects, like to contribute data to the scientific, in order to contribute to the works of scientists and the policymakers. Moving on to the next activity. I would like to ask you.
Sorry, I have an update before we move on. I think that Professor Skoulos can join.
Okay, so I will pause my sharing.
Okay. So give 10 seconds to Professor Skoulos to join the meeting room.
Can you see now the PPT or no, Vicky?
We can still see the slide with the next question.
Maybe I should stop sharing.
Stop sharing.
And invite Professor Skoulos for
yes, give him
welcome.
A couple of seconds. He's joining in now.
I'm sorry for that. It's full of webinars for everyone, as you probably know yourselves. In the meantime, you can think of this question. So the question is to think of an object that is probably found on the beach and think of a practice that led it there. And you can write these reflections in the chat. A, the object, and B, the practice that has led it there. You have 1 minute. So we see already some answers.
Hello, good morning, everybody. We have some problems, connection problems today.
Hello, Professor Skoulos. No worries. We are already rolling in the webinar. We have already announced to the participants that the chair of MIO will give you a warm welcome, and you are excused due to the overload of webinars and seminars. So yeah, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Iro. Thank you very much. Actually, I'm going to say very few things. I'm very glad that we have this meeting and this webinar. The issue is extremely important, critical. We are talking about hundreds or thousands of tons every day of plastic entering the Mediterranean. The purpose of this education and awareness. The kit we have prepared is for helping you in your work in all kinds of education, I believe, formal, even non-formal, mostly, and informal, and addresses in particular individual students, but your work, the work of NGOs dealing with this through this material is also advocacy in the sense of what is needed to be included in curricula, in overall educational approaches, or in at all levels, and at the same time, it helps when we are approaching governments, local authorities, and others with proposals about the proper management of solid waste. We say, yes, we have this, we are doing our work, we are doing this, but the root cause is the management of solid waste, where there is a limit of how much we can do. We do our job. We try to direct people to the right selection, separation at source, and all these kind of things, to reduce, to make the right choices for single-use plastics, to have an informed population that does not throw paper waste, whatever, in the beach or whatever. But at the same time, this will not have the impact we want unless we have also a very responsible approach from the state. So it has this double, let's say, purpose, educating individuals, educating groups and the society as a whole, because through pupils and students, you can reach the family, and you can, from the beginning, we have to stress this important way in influencing the society, but also strengthening our position in our advocacy work, and in insisting that we are doing our part, but there is a need also from the organized authorities to do their own job in a proper way. I don't want to take more time. You are in safe hands. The material is I think you judge, but is well designed and also easy to use and deliver, is user friendly. And I hope that this will be one more joint activity supported by us, and we would very much like to have your feedback from the implementation of this work in your environment, schools, NGOs, communities, whatever it is. A flexible material that can be used at many different conditions, circumstances, and the rest. And I apologize for our technical
no worries.
difficulties. Okay, no. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you very much. So we dived out, and now we will dive in again to the material after the short intervention of Professor Skoulos. Let me share. I hope you can see it now. We were in this question. Already we saw several answers in the chat box, So we don't think only of the objects, but we start to think of the practices or of the improper management around marine litter. Let's see. Again. Okay, here it is. In this activity, we start to question practices, management practices, consumer practices, and so on, that lead to the marine litter items found at the beach or in the sea. And for every wrong practice we identify, we ask students, our learners, to think of alternative good practices. Again, in this activity, we start with places, points of sources of marine litter that are familiar to them, such as their house, their neighborhood, their school, and move also to other sources of marine litter, such as a factory, a greenhouse, or agricultural activity, and so on. So if you want to run this activity, some tips. Around 80% of marine litter we know comes from land, although we call it marine litter, most of it is generated inland. And sadly, in the last years, around 3/4 of marine litter are single-use plastics, the acronym of SUPs. The root causes of marine litter, as Professor Skoulas also pointed out, relate to inadequate management, our indifference, but mostly the prevailing, since a number of years, production and consumption patterns. I share with you this slide showing the gradual increase in plastics productions, and I have highlighted the year 2000. I don't know where you were in 2000. Maybe some of you were not born, but I remember very well my life around 2000. And it was not so different from my life now in terms of everyday life, with the exception of technology, of course. But you see that now in 2021, we have almost doubled in just 20 years, the production of plastics, and most of them are single-use plastics, or 36% according to UNEP in 2015. So this is something that needs to be changed. In the next activity that we will do, we will only mention, we ask learners to identify the decomposition time for various marine litter items. We have aluminium, plastic objects, cigarette butts, and so on. So how long will these materials take to degrade in the aquatic environment? When we do this activity, we need to point out that these degradation times are rough estimates, as they are affected by the prevailing conditions, the depth of the sea, the light, and the object's original size, its thickness and shape. Another thing to point out is that for as long as they live, for example, we say for a plastic bottle, that can be several decades or even hundreds of years, they are a constant threat to wildlife. So our next activity deals with threats to marine life. And our question to you is, do you know the term ghost fishing? A for yes, B for no, or C, I've heard it, but I'm not sure what it means. Please write it in the chat. And concerning, and if I think of what you said in the previous chat responses, many of you are already familiar with this term. If Vicky is around.
That's true. I can tell a lot of A's, some C's, but the majority is replying with an A.
Okay.
So far.
So this is a sign that already not only us, the educators or the NGO people are familiar with terms like this, but gradually also a lot of consumers, citizens, are aware of such issues. So in this activity, we deal with the main threats to marine wildlife, which is, of course, entanglement and digestion, of course. One thing that we can point is that all life, not just marine life, is threatened by waste. And of course, a big dimension of this, very crucial dimension of this problem has to do with birds, and birds feeding their chicks with litter. For those that are not sure about what ghost fishing is, so it is what happens to abandoned or lost nets that float in the sea, catch fish and other wildlife, and then attract other wildlife that try to eat the captured ones. And this is a vicious circle. And unless these nets are taken by humans out of the sea, this vicious circle can go on for centuries. So for our next activity, this picture is taken in a Mechaniona port in Greece. It was a project about fishing for litter taking place some years ago. So we see this fisherman, and I will give you 1 minute to propose in the chat box his thoughts. I would like to ask you to write in the first person. For example, he could be thinking, I wonder if there's any tiny fish in this mess. Obviously, there is no right or wrong answer. You can be very creative in your responses, but I would like your responses to be in the first person. What could this man be thinking?
May I give a hint so far?
Yes?
I think this is a mess. How I'm going to untangle this? I can take this with me to land. I will dispose it back to the ocean anyway. I can't use it anymore. Get rid of it. I need a new net.
Okay. And of course, we can have really creative responses here, if you're not shy. So what we do with this activity, we present interesting photos. You can start with the photos that are included in the material, but then, of course, you can browse on the internet and find, depending on your goals, find really interesting photos and ask your learners to imagine the thoughts of the protagonists. From these, we call them bubble speeches. From these thoughts, you can start a discussion about the impacts on marine litter, this time on humans. Of course, you should pay attention to the kind of photos that you select. Here we share with you some other photos besides the ones that are in the material. And we will move to the next activity. So in the next activity, we deal with plastics properties. And our question to you this time is to consider why have the plastics prevailed in modern life? Taking the example of this object, the plastic skep, note down its properties that make it useful to us. Why we use this object? And we don't use, for example, a wooden one.
And here it comes, the famous properties of plastics: not heavy, easy to clean, light, cheap, accessible, washable, durable, long-lasting. Yeah.
Okay. You're right. Plastics have all these properties. That's why this magic material has prevailed in our modern societies. They're lightweight, they're inert, they're cheap, they're impermeable, they're durable, they're good insulators, malleable, they're elastic, and they're resistant to breaking. However, in the next activity, we will see how these properties can render them dangerous, these materials, once these materials end up in the sea. So taking this particular example, this object, the skep, a plastic skep, you said it's lightweight. Because it is lightweight, it can travel long distances before it eventually sinks at the bottom of the sea. You say that it is durable. So it will take centuries to degrade in the sea, and at some point it will fragment to microplastic, which is another big threat for our marine life and our seas. Another property is that it is cheap. It is cheap because the environmental cost of using plastics has not really been integrated in their market cost. So the owner usually does not value its worth, as it can be easily replaced. Some tips for running this activity. We can, starting from these objects, discuss the polluter pays principle and how it is applied in the case of plastic production. Discuss about the different standards and their waste management systems in the country or in the various Mediterranean countries, and discuss if the low price of plastics includes their environmental costs. Especially this goes for the single-use plastics. That we said already, around 3/4 of the marine litter items found in beach cleanups are single-use plastics. This is a picture of a detergent that was found almost intact after 47 years. Plastic is forever, some say. And moving on to the next activity. So again, in this activity, we deal with polymers, with plastics, with the polymers, or with the polymerization method. So we start with the commonly found objects at the household level, and we wish that our learners get accustomed with polymerization and with recognizing the polymers as plastics. So I would like now to invite you to use this object that you have around you. It can be a container or another plastic object, and to look for its label or some type of sign that indicates what type of polymer it is. And please write it in the chat. Sometimes we have this coding system for plastics that are from 1 to 7. You can write also the number. If you're not sure about the polymer, you can write the number in the label.
I can tell a lot of PET.
PET, which is very...
Yes, polyethylene, high density. Also on number 5, a lot of number 5.
Polypropylene.
Polypropylene, yes. But a lot of PETs.
A lot of PETs, which is the most one of the most abundant. Okay, we will come back to this question of the chat in a few slides. But now I have one more question for you. Can you name a source of microplastics? Where do they come from? How are they generated?
So the list is getting bigger and bigger. I can see fuel, shopping bags, cigarette bags, from shampoos, from straws, from clothing, from masks, from broken down hard plastics,
Okay.
from everything made by plastics, from clothes again, from breaking down of plastics. Yes, we can have some
Okay, so you're right.
tendencies. Clothes.
One major source is, of course, the fragmentation of plastic objects that we said already. Another source is cosmetics with microbeads, for example, exfoliators, shampoos, as one of you said. And it's nice to know that in Europe there is a movement now in order to forbid the use of microbeads in cosmetics, and hopefully in the next I don't know, a few months or a few years, we have some positive developments around that. Synthetic clothes, as you said, polyester clothes are so popular, releasing microfibers in every wash. Again, here we have some good news from the development of washing machines. They have improved their filters in order to collect these microfibers, but still a lot of it goes to the aquatic environment. The same goes for car tires that release microfibers with every brake. And again, we have the pellets. I don't know how familiar we are with the pellets. Maybe I can stop sharing for a while and Vicky can show you. The pellets are the raw material from which we make plastics. They are called also the mermaid's tears because they look like tears. Vicky?
Yes, I have a small plastic vase, which is filled with pellets. I can bring it closer to the camera. Can you see these very small, like a teardrops? Usually are colorless, but most of them are colorless, but due to the exposure to the sun, some of them have become yellowish. Some others are also having some colors. So this is the pellets, the raw material to produce plastic objects. And I have another one together with me. This includes fragmented plastics that have been broken down, and you can see the small parts of plastic.
Okay.
I hope you can see them.
I will share back. Let's see. You can see my screen now?
Yes, Iro, go ahead.
For some reason, when I do that, I cannot move forward. Okay. So in this activity, how do we ask our learners to discover microplastics? Of course, we need to explain to them what microplastics are and to show to them what microplastics are, and then invite them to go to the beach and do a monitoring activity. So they trace 1 by 1 square meter on a sandy beach that is close to the winter shoreline. So it is the place, a line along the beach where seaweed wood is collected. And under this line, they will probably find a lot of pellets and a lot of fragmented plastics. So they can use a sieve to collect them and take a photo and upload it in order to communicate this to us.
Iro, we have a question here about the process. How deep is going to be our square? 1 by 1, 1 plus 1, but what depth do you remember? What depth we choose?
2 or 3 centimeters. We don't need to go deeper because
so it's going to be a shallow surface, let's say.
Yes, and they're going to be on the top. But when you do this activity, you should avoid beaches with pebbles. It is easier for students to find the pellets in sandy beaches. They will be, of course, also in the beaches with pebbles, but it will be more difficult for students to find them because they have to take the pebbles aside. But it is shocking, actually. When I started collecting microplastics, I didn't expect that they would be everywhere. They're on every beach. You will not have difficulty in finding them. So we already said that it's easier to trace them on a sandy beach. A large part of findings in cleanup these days are fragmented plastics. So there are small pieces of plastics, 1 or 2 centimeters diameter, that cannot be identified from which object that they came from. It is advised that you collect yourselves and have handy 2 jars to present to the learners before they go and do this activity. So moving on to the next question for you again. This is a symbol that we find often in packaging. So our question to you is, the use of this symbol means that the producer financially contributes to the recycling of the packaging material. The packaging material can be recycled and should be placed in the proper bin. Or C, I don't know. So write A, B, or C in the chat. You have some time.
I can see that we have a diversity in the replies so far. Some have replied A, others C, other B. It's a more half and half situation so far.
So we also have some C's. Some people don't know what this symbol means.
That's true.
Okay. Many people, when they see the symbol, think that the material can be recycled. Actually, it does not necessarily mean that the material can be recycled, this label. This symbol indicates, in Greece and in other countries as well, that the producer of this material contributes financially to the collection and management of this material once it becomes waste. So in this activity, we deal with the international coding system in packaging materials. We explain the main symbols, such as the ones that you see in this slide. And of course, we explain further the codes that relate to plastic. In the previous question, a lot of you talked about PETs. You gave the code of the plastic that appears in the packaging. These codes, this is what we try to explain in this activity. Contrary to what most people think, when they see this triangle with the number inside, they forget the number and they see the triangle and they think that the material can be recycled. Actually, this is a myth. The most easily to recycle codes are 1, 2, and 5. The rest depend on the management system that you have in your region. And for sure, polystyrene, which is number 6, is very problematic, and that's why in the European Union it is phased out, and in many other countries. PVC as well. So this activity gives us an opportunity to discuss about this numbering system. And if you have older learners, I advise you to browse on the internet and to find the story behind this labeling system and how the plastic manufacturers back in the 70s managed to, let's say, take ownership of this triangle symbol that to most people makes a connotation to recycling, but it's actually, it doesn't necessarily mean that the object can be recycled. One other thing to point out is number 7. Of course, we don't have only 7 number codes, categories of plastics, but we have some hundreds or even more. So all other, except for those 6 popular, go under 7. And most objects that are labeled as 7 are not recycled. So check your local recycling systems before you explain what can be recycled and not. Insist that only clean plastic is recycled. So if those who manage waste or the recycling bin see that the objects that are inside the bin are messed up with organic or they are not clean, they will waste it. They will put it in the waste, the normal waste bin. Multi-layered containers are a big issue. For example, we tend to say that coffee cups, we call them paper cups, but they're not paper only. They're lined inside with a polymer, and these are not recycled. Hopefully the EU new directive, the new legislation, will gradually simplify the labels in order for the consumer to know the proper way of disposing them in the next years. Now, in the next activities, we move on to solutions and to actions. So in this activity, I would like to ask you again to reply in the first person and to complete this sentence. In order to solve the problem of plastic pollution, I can. So start your sentence from I can. What you can personally do in the direction of solving this problem. Don't theorize, be very practical. Think of your everyday life, your work, the people that you are close to. And try to use action verbs. How can you contribute to solving the problem?
Yes, we do have various practical examples of action. I can change my consumption choices, patterns. I can reuse. I can reduce plastics. I can refuse use of plastics. I can use multiple use, maybe reuse. I can stop use single-use plastics in my school. But at home, I suppose that they will keep using it. Okay, I'm just joking. Reduce and reuse. I can stop use single-use plastic again in my school, refuse single-use plastics, and so on.
Okay. So in this activity with our learners, we ask them in a similar approach to propose action verbs. Action verbs, how they can contribute to solution. We give them some verbs already in some cards, but we have some empty cards that we ask them to fill in. And after they do that, especially if you do this exercise at the class level, then we ask them to prioritize these verbs. Because all proposed verbs have their value, but some may be more effective than others in driving solutions. Which ones do you consider as most important? For example, we can say that the verb I can avoid should be prioritized higher than the verb I will recycle or I will participate in a cleanup. The verb I will organize a cleanup should be placed also very high in our prioritization because it shows that the learner not only shows a practice in his own personal sphere, but he or she intends to do something for the community. So this prioritization can generate interesting discussions. You can ask learners to compare their ratings, start a debate, and after this debate, maybe some learners choose to reorder their prioritization or choose to add some verbs that initially they hadn't thought of. Moving on to the next activity, we don't have here a question for you because it's a rather simple activity. We give a list of objects to the students and we show the bins that are available in the recycling system of your region. Again, we have these 5 bins that are used in Greece, but depending on where you are, you should present your what is your reality. And then it's a very practical thing that you can do. We propose also to do it not through pictures, but through actual objects, of course, in a COVID-safe manner, if you run it this way, and ask students to sort a list of objects and then discuss their mistakes. Also discuss how many of these objects could have been avoided in the first place. So we're talking about recycling, but we are always refer to the top of the prioritization, which is the minimization, so avoiding the use of plastic ideally. Okay, for those of you who are not from Greece, I'm sure that the Greeks are very familiar with this picture. This is a recycling bin that we use in Greece. It's the blue bin, and it accepts all types of recyclable packaging. So it accepts paper, plastic, glass, aluminium, and so on. So our question to you this time is to observe this picture and to notice mistakes that you see in the use of the bin. Maybe this exercise is easier for the Greeks, but I will give you some time. To observe it carefully.
Yes, we do have some answers and very correct ones. Of course, it is not a covered bin. We have mixed materials. Some of them can be recycled, some others cannot. We are using plastic bags. We should not use the plastic bags, but we have to put the items as such. Yes, again, the materials are mixed and so on and so forth. Dirty waste as well.
Dirty waste, what we said already before.
Not all items are clean.
Good, very good students. So, you said already that the lid is open, it should be closed. And if one observes around the bin, you can see scattered waste items around the bin, probably blown by the wind. We can see a tight bag. It should have been emptied, as you said. We can see a cigarette butt. We can see unfolded carton boxes. This is a very big problem because with 2 or 3 boxes that are unfolded, carton boxes, the bin is full and all the other items are left outside the bin. So the carton boxes should be folded before they enter the bin. We see a plastic cup with a coffee that should have been at least emptied, if not rinsed, because it contaminates the bin. So if you do this activity, obviously you should tailor-made to the recycling system of your region to identify the mistakes, the common mistakes made. Typical mistakes for Greece is that we mix recyclables with organic. We overload bins due to not folding the boxes, as you can see. We place in the bin dirty or unrinsed plastic containers. We don't separate the materials. This is also another problem. We should separate the materials. For example, plastic from paper. We saw it also in the previous picture in the bin. We try to sort as much as possible the materials away. And also this is, let's say, the current trend in the European Union and other countries, sorting the types of materials separately. So the tendency is not to have them all in one bin. So we need to work with our learners to learn to separate the materials, even if they use for the time being the same bin. In the future, we hope that we will have several bins for several materials. Open bins we said already. Okay, moving on to the next exercise. We try in this exercise to talk about, in this activity, talk about the circular mindset and to introduce students to the circular mindset, which is a broader mindset than simple recycling. It's a whole process that starts from the design phase of any material, any object. And the design, already in the design phase, the designer thinks the end of life of the material. So in this activity, we can, for example, ask learners to discuss the life cycle of a bottle, a plastic bottle, which is the traditional linear model, and then ask them to describe the life cycle of a leaf. And then ask them how the life cycle of a leaf could inspire them to think of an alternative way of designing the plastic bottle. The next activity has to do with the European law. I'm not sure how many of you come from European countries, but recently in Europe, we have a new directive on plastics and single-use plastics that is already translated into law in many countries. And in the next 5 years, several measures are going to be taking place in the countries in order to deal with the problem. So using a scale from 0 to 5 max, how familiar do you feel with this European directive on plastics? Do you know it? Have you heard of it?
I think they hesitate to answer. We have some twos.
You can be frank, you can say 0.
Okay.
If you don't know of the EU directive, or you come from a country that does not apply it.
No, a lot of no's, but it's okay.
No. Okay. So this is an activity, this is a chance for all of us to know better the European law, especially for learners that live in the European countries. So in this activity, we ask learners to discover the diversified targets of the European Union regarding soups, single-use plastics. These measures are diverse, so they concern reduction for some objects, redesign. For example, in the next few years, the producers of plastic bottles will be obliged to design them in a way so that the lid will be fixed on the bottle. It will not be separated. Similarly, as we did some years ago with the aluminum tins, if you remember, originally the lid was separate and now it's fixed on the container. Something like that will happen also with the plastic bottles. There are measures regarding composition. For example, the next few years, a certain percentage of the plastic bottles will have to come from recycled plastic. There are measures regarding the producer's responsibility, and there are measures regarding awareness of the public. Oh, sorry. So in this activity, we can compare the laws that are found in our country with the European Union's ones. We can browse in other campaigns and to get inspiration. And we ask the students to organize a school awareness campaign. So after they study the European law and after they study other campaigns, they can find a slogan, design a poster, and set up an exhibition in order to make their school aware of the issue. So there are several soft skills that can be cultivated with this activity in designing an awareness campaign. Next question for you, and please be frank. How often do you carry your refillable water bottle when outdoors? Never, 0. So if it's never, you should write 0. If it's not so often, you should write 1. If it is most of the times, you should write 2. And if it is always, you should write 3.
I
How
think,
often?
you can go ahead now. You can move on. We have a lot of 2s and 3s.
2s and 3s.
2s and 3s,
So we
yes.
have the dedicated educators that will drive the message further. And of course, besides joking about it, it's important to lead by example. We cannot talk about single-use plastic mentality and try to make our students aware and sensitized about it and carry a plastic bottle. It's a paradox. Anyway, in this activity, we ask students to do a survey on daily habits. We ask them to think of their daily practices at school, at home, the level of plastic that they use, and explore. There is some scoring that they can do, high score or low score, and then think of ideas how they can improve the score. Then the activity asks them to commit to changing a habit for at least a week. Only one habit. But during this week, we ask them to note their thoughts in a diary. So we ask them, even if they're not, for example, one student may say that I will not use a plastic bag. But at one point, maybe he will have to use a plastic bag. We will not, of course, penalize this, but we will ask him to note in the diary what happened this day, why this happened, and what were his thoughts about that. At the end of the week, we can have a discussion with our class about this process, and some of them may opt for extending to up to a month this, let's say, new habit. And we can start simple and gradually get more ambitious with our personal goals. Of course, since we're talking about personal habits, it's also a quite delicate issue that in our discussions we should be careful in order not to patronize or, you know, our students. And now moving on from the personal sphere to the community, to the school sphere. Suppose that your class decides to advocate to become a plastic-free school. Who will you engage? So suppose you are a teacher with a class and that you want to design a project, or you want your school simply to become plastic free.
Yes.
Where do you start from? Who you will engage? Let's see.
I can tell that we have here a whole institute and a whole community approach. Students, parents, all related stakeholders, management staff, local NGOs, local experts, whole school community, the principals, the other supportive school staff. Yes, the responses are so inclusive, I can tell.
Great. So from your answers, what we just did is a preliminary stakeholder mapping activity. So we map all the stakeholders around the school community that are important to be engaged in this endeavor. Again, I cannot move. Let's see. So in this activity, we are talking about an action plan for the entire school. We advise that you set an ambitious but realistic goal. If your students are familiar with projects and environmental projects and so on, and already committed in a number of ways, of course, you should aim high. But if your students are you are not really sure about how the school will take it, maybe you can set a more realistic goal, for example, having a plastic-free class, not a plastic-free school, and see how this goes with your own class for a year, and then move to the level of the entire school. At the beginning, you should define your actions by setting questions, simple questions like what to do, who to engage, where the activities will take place, how and when. You can divide the work among the groups of your learners. And of course, inform your entire school community, not only inform, engage your entire school community about your action plan. In this activity, some tips we would like to share concern the barriers. Sometimes people want to be part of the solution, but don't know how, what to do. People like other classes, the administration, the cafeteria staff, or the cleaning staff, which are very important groups in a plastic-free school. So definitely these groups need to be engaged, but maybe they don't know how. What are their barriers? What can they do? Why they are resisting or hesitating to do that? And what can we do as students, as learners, as a committed community to motivate them? So these are the questions that may be useful for you to discuss with your students. So for each barrier, ask your students, discuss with your students, and of course, discuss with the person that has this barrier, a way to motivate them and to go over the barrier. Keep in mind that action plans rarely go as planned. Never, from my experience. So be prepared to adjust, adapt, be flexible, modify your plan, and move further. I hope everyone is here and alive. I see we have 46 participants. We are almost at the end because this is the +1 activity. We already presented the 18 activities of the material. So in this last activity, the idea, the approach is to do something bigger, to inspire them to work on the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, to keep being an active citizen. So we propose a number of resources about the SDGs, and we propose that you use these resources to initiate in your school an action for each of these 17 SDGs in order for your students to keep being active. Again, I don't know why this happens, but okay, I hope it was not very tiring for you. And now it's time for your questions. Yet you can, we have some time that you can use the chat to ask, or you can take the floor if you want. Vicky will share with you the evaluation questionnaire in the chat. It's a 3-minute, 3 questions basically regarding the webinar. As Vicky said at the beginning, the PowerPoint, together with this video recording, will be shared through Medis. So we will upload them and notify you where you can find it. Of course, you are most welcome to browsing the material itself. I think I will stop sharing now. And
Iro, we have
comments.
yes, we have already shared the link where the material is uploaded on our website, and the small survey, the small online questionnaire for the evaluation. Our friend Anna Hyde asks if we do somehow relate to the Eco Schools initiative. I will say that from time to time we have been cooperating. We had some cooperations with teams and groups from Eco Schools from various countries, but still there is not any systematic a framework of cooperation between us. But we are always open for cooperations and joint activities. I don't see any other questions for the moment.
I would like to maybe end with some interactive activity, but I will ask you to open your cameras. This is another tip that I can share with you, especially in this period when we all have to do a lot of webinars and teach through the screen. So I advise to use objects and to use the cameras as well of your learners. So using a scale from, let's say the first question would be, how many of you have browsed in this educational material that we just explored? Say yes or no, but please have your cameras open. So this is an informal way of evaluating. How many of you have browsed? Yes? Have gone through, or no? Have gone through the, oh, okay. I see some hands, but not so many. Okay, after this webinar that we are finishing in a few minutes, how many of you feel inspired about browsing in this book? Again, yes? Happy to know that. Good. Okay, let's say another question for you. After this webinar, from a level from 1 to 5, again using your hand, how inspired or motivated or willing you feel about trying at least one of the activities that we discussed here? 1, not so motivated, and 5 is super motivated. So you can use it as a scale with your hand. Let's see, from 1 to 5. I see some 5s, 3 to 4. Okay, good for us. I hope the rest that do not have opened the cameras are not
Sleeping.
one or 0. Or...
I got some very nice snapshots.
Okay, I think we are almost done. A few final remarks in order to connect to what Professor Skoulas was saying in his introduction. Yes, you're welcome to use this tool any way you like. You can start small or design a whole project that is a year long with your students. I agree with Professor Skoulos that it's important to see the wider picture and move beyond changing the personal habits at the level of consumption. We need, I think, to work at the level of energizing our students in order to be more active citizens, to write letters, to organize projects, to try to push the market as consumers to the direction that they need to see. So these are very, very critical and important skills. And I think that this material may be practical, but in using it, I would for sure recommend to work in this dimension. It's the most important dimension, because the market will hear the consumer eventually. Okay, so we will, I don't know, Vicky, you have anything to say? I see here Vasilis, who has been contributing also content in this material. Maybe he wants to add some words. Vasilis, you're okay. Vicky? Vasilis?
Happy to be with you, and I'm looking forward for negotiation with many of you, since MEDIS has a first priority to contact with the teachers, the heart of the education system all over the world.
So as Professor Skoulos, we will be waiting for your comments through the MEDIS network. We invite all of you, if you are not members already, to join this network in medias.net. And this way you will be receiving from us news and updates regarding education for sustainable development in general. We are not working only on the issue of plastic waste. But many other issues. I see a hand raised by Omouni.
Yes.
We hear
Can I
you?
say something?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I joined the webinar a bit late. I don't know if it's going to be uploaded, or the recording will be uploaded.
Yes, it will be uploaded. We will notify you by email.
Okay, great. Thank you.
The PPT as well, the PowerPoint presentation will be shared. Any other question?
I would like to add something else, that we have a brochure, we have a leaflet, we have in English and in French, so can help your work in the school also with this pedagogical material.
Yes, and you're welcome to contact us in case you work with many students and want some hard copies. We will see how we can accommodate that. We don't have a lot of hard copies, but we will see what we can do. Okay, that's it from us. Vicky, final word? Maybe I
thank
can
you all.
your
Just to
cameras
thank
and
all.
just say bye-bye to us.
Yes, thank you for your lovely participation and your warm feedback. We are looking forward to hearing from you, from your applications, from your test trials, from your ideas, proposals for continuation of this effort. Thank you all.
And don't forget to fill in your evaluation. So that's it from us for now. See you next time. Bye-bye. Ciao. Bye, nice to see you.
Bye.